Welcome back. From time to time on TV 23, you notice that we do a lot of history stories from the Pioneer Museum and Art Center. And with me today on some activity that's going on out there right now, as a matter of fact, is Director Sarah Taylor. Sarah, I noticed that there's been a lot of construction going on out at the Pioneer Museum. What's happening?
Well, we are embarking on a very exciting project, and that is to bring the Lee Reynolds building, which was originally at Fort Supply, to the museum grounds. And we're now reconstructing that building. Okay, the Lee Reynolds building. Tell us a little about that structure and what it's all about.
Okay,
the building is actually donated by Wilma and Kenyon Duggar, who are from Amarillo. And Wilma's grandfather, Tebow Linneman, brought the building from the fort to his land in about 1894-95. But the original use of the building was that Lee and Reynolds, we were the two traders for Fort Supply, built it in the 1870s and used it probably as a blacksmith shop. Now, we're not for certain on that, but that's the story through the family that we get. They used it as a blacksmith shop, and they're at the fort. So it was built in the 1870s by Mr. Lee and Mr. Reynolds.
Well, we have some pictures here for you, and as we kind of show them to you a little bit, why don't you tell us a little bit about the unusualness and some of the unique things that go along with this building.
Okay. As you look at the first picture, you can certainly notice that this is an unusual building by the way it's constructed. The poles, the very large cedar logs are stuck in the ground about 3 or 4 feet originally.
Stuck right into the ground
right
there.
Into the ground, straight into the ground. And then the building in this picture has lost much of its chinking, which is the material that goes over the logs to seal it up, basically. Has fallen off. But when we put it up at the museum, it will have the chinking on it eventually.
Will we be able to tell that the logs are going up and down?
Oh, yes, I think for sure.
Now, most buildings at that time were log cabins, traditional log cabins going horizontal. Now, why did they build buildings like that?
Well, this is a typical style and type of construction that was used in military forts around the period of the time that Fort Supply started, which was in 1868. So
sturdier to Indians knocking on the door or something, I guess?
I have no idea, except perhaps it took less logs. Trees are pretty scarce around this area.
Sure, I bet they were then too, huh?
Right, definitely, more so than now.
The next one there?
Okay, the next one is a picture of the sod house part, the lean-to part that was added by the Linneman family. Now, they added a shed onto the original building after they... Right. It was about, I think, added about 10 to 12 feet.
And why did they do that? Expansion or just...
Well, they needed a home, of course. They were living in a dugout. Of course, remember, this is back in the 1890s when housing was pretty scarce. And so they built on this house, which was a real nice, tidy house with lots of whitewashing on the walls and whatnot. What's interesting is I just have recently read a story from one of the men, the Linneman men that lived in the building. The reason they added the house to the barn, see, the back part was the barn, the front part was the house. The reason they did that was to protect the horses from being stolen. A lot of horse stealing was going on at the time.
Sure.
We see an inside view of the barn part of this building, and that back wall is the original wall of the Lee Reynolds building.
Now, are we going to try to preserve the original walls inside the building too?
Oh, yes. And, well, the logs on the outside and the logs inside are the same log.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Next is a picture of how they loaded these up. Now, the construction crew on this is Eaker Construction.
Right. I believe we're going to cover that in the next story. We're going to go out and actually look at what some of the work they're doing out there right now.
Great. They brought the logs in on trailers that were loaned to us by Bob Selman, so we're very grateful to Mr. Selman for his volunteering that aspect of it. Next, we have a picture of a very interesting log that was used inside the Lee Reynolds barn part of that building.
And what does that say on there?
Well, it says Lee and Ferguson, and then on further that the picture doesn't show says Camp Supply.
So that's actual proof that this building is what we're saying it is.
Right, that's right. What's confusing though is Ferguson was the second partner to Lee.
Okay.
Reynolds was first, Ferguson was second. So I didn't want anybody to be confused by that. The Eakers have been very cooperative with us. This is a very unique construction project for them and for us, I'm sure, and it's hard to do everything just right, but they've been very cooperative.
Now, you mentioned a minute ago as to the number of people who have helped out on this, and sure, it hasn't all been free, but there has been some voluntary donations and stuff, and you mentioned one, the Selman.
Mr. Selman is the primary one, and the Ekers, of course, are getting paid through a grant from the Oklahoma State government. They gave $20,000 to the Oklahoma Historical Society, which then they've passed that money on to us, and that's what's putting that Lee Reynolds building together.
Right. We mentioned the Oklahoma State Historical Society. I read in an article where they looked at the project several years back, and it was going to cost a little too much for them to restore it down in the city.
That's
and then
right.
we picked it up? Or?
That's right. We found out about the building about a year and a half ago, and during the time that we learned about it, we heard that the Historical Society had in fact been offered the building and seriously considered moving it to Oklahoma City, but it just was not feasible for them to move it all that way and go through the expense, and plus they don't have too much grounds around the museum.
Right.
So we were very fortunate to be able to utilize this building.
Very good work going on out at the Pioneer Museum, and we will be watching for the completion of this building in the months to come.
Yeah.
We'll be back with another story from the Reconstruction site at the Pioneer Museum, reconstructing the William Lee and Albert Reynolds tanning shed?
Blacksmith shop.
Blacksmith shop, whatever. We'll find out more about that right after this.